In front of me is the oldest colossal statue on Earth, and it is still keeping its secrets. A lion the length of a city block with the face of a king, carved from the solid rock of this plateau more than 4,500 years ago. It has been buried to its neck by the desert, worshipped as a god, blamed on the wrong vandals, and dug free again and again. Its nose is missing, its beard sits in 2 museums, and its original name is lost. This morning we are walking right up to it. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza. We are on the Giza Plateau, on the west bank of the Nile at the edge of Greater Cairo, Egypt. This limestone shelf carries the 3 great pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, the royal cemetery of Egypt's 4th dynasty. The Sphinx crouches below them at the eastern foot of the plateau, right where the desert meets the green of the river valley. It sits beside the ruined temples that anchored the pyramid of Khafre, and it faces the sunrise. Everything we walk past today was already ancient when Rome was founded. The first surprise is not the size, it is the setting. The Sphinx does not stand on top of anything. It sits down inside a great open trench cut into the plateau, so you first see it from above, across the pit. Behind it, the pyramid of Khafre rises on the skyline, and the 2 monuments line up as if composed for a painting. Then you work your way closer along the terrace, and the scale arrives all at once. The paws alone stand taller than any person on this walkway. The Sphinx was not built. It was found inside the plateau and cut free. Quarry crews carved a huge horseshoe-shaped trench into the bedrock, hauling out limestone blocks for the temples nearby, and they left a massive knoll of stone standing in the middle. Sculptors then shaped that knoll into a lion's body with a human head, working from the top down. The statue is one piece with the ground it sits on, living rock from head to tail. Only the lower body and the great outstretched paws were finished with fitted masonry blocks. The body runs about 240 feet from forepaw to tail, roughly the length of a city block. The head rises about 66 feet above the floor of the enclosure, the height of a 6-story building. Each paw reaches out some 50 feet, and the face is more than 13 feet wide. This is the largest surviving monolithic statue of the ancient world, and among the oldest monumental sculptures anywhere on Earth. And the evidence suggests it was carved in a single generation. Most Egyptologists date the Sphinx to the reign of the pharaoh Khafre, around 2500 BC. Khafre raised the second of the Great Pyramids, the one that still wears a cap of original polished casing stones at its peak. His funerary complex ran downhill from that pyramid along a stone causeway to a valley temple at the edge of the floodplain. The Sphinx and its own temple sit immediately beside that causeway and that valley temple, cut from the same quarries and set on the same alignment. Seen from above, the whole arrangement reads as one unified royal project. The face is a portrait of a king, framed by the royal Neme's headcloth, the pleated fabric that falls beside the pharaoh's cheeks. On the forehead you can still make out the base of the uraeus, the rearing cobra that guarded the ruler. Traces of red paint have been found on the face, with blue and yellow on the headcloth, so this statue was once brightly painted. The expression reads serene, stern, or faintly amused depending on the hour and the light. Whoever he was, he has watched roughly 1.6 million sunrises from this spot. No inscription from the time of construction names the builder, so the case for Khafre is assembled from evidence on the ground. The Sphinx Enclosure and Khafre's causeway share edges and drainage in ways that only make sense if they were planned together. Blocks quarried out of the Sphinx trench went into the temples of Khafre's complex, tying the digging and the building into one operation. And the face is a close cousin of the famous dark stone statue of Khafre found buried in his valley temple, now a treasure of the Egyptian Museum. A minority of scholars argue for his father Khufu or another royal relative, but nearly all agree the Sphinx belongs to this dynasty. The walkway loops along the south side of the enclosure, and every few steps the statue rearranges itself. From the front it is all face and paws. From the side it stretches out into a true resting lion, haunches folded and tail curled around the right hip. Morning is the kind hour here, with the sun still low in the east and the stone glowing amber. Photographers crowd the terrace for the classic line up of the head against Khafre's pyramid. It is one of the most photographed views on the planet, and it still stops people mid-stride. Directly in front of the paws stand the ruins of the Sphinx Temple, built of enormous limestone blocks cut straight from the trench around the statue, some weighing as much as 100 tons. Its open courtyard held 24 pillars, which many scholars read as the 24 hours of the day, arranged around sanctuaries facing east and west. That plan suggests a temple of the sun, with the Sphinx itself standing guard over the daily circuit. Strangely, the temple appears never to have been finished, and not a single inscription was carved inside it. The builders walked away, and no one knows exactly why. The Sphinx faces due east, straight into the rising sun. At the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun climbs directly along its line of sight, and at the summer solstice, watch from here, the sun sets between the pyramids of Khufu and Khafre. Egyptian religion turned on the daily rebirth of the sun, and the lion was a creature of the horizon in Egyptian thought. Many Egyptologists therefore read the statue as a solar guardian, the king's face joined to the lion's power at the exact place where the sun returned each morning. It is astronomy you can read with your bare eyes. Look at the enclosure walls and the statue's flanks, and you can read the geology like an open book. This is the Makatam Formation, limestone laid down roughly 50 million years ago at the bottom of a warm, shallow sea that covered northern Egypt. The stone of the plateau is packed with the fossils of seashells and other marine creatures. Its layers vary wildly in hardness, from dense reef stone to soft, crumbly bands that flake at a touch. The sculptors carved straight down through all of them, and that decision wrote the statue's future. Geologists divide the Sphinx into 3 rock members, and the differences explain its strange condition. The base is hard reef limestone that has barely weathered in 45 centuries. The long body is carved from soft, poor-quality layers that erode easily, which is why the flanks look melted, ribbed, and deeply channeled. The head is cut from the hardest stone of all, which is why the face keeps its detail while everything below it has crumbled and been patched. One statue, 3 kinds of stone, 3 completely different fates. That ruined body feeds one of Egyptology's liveliest arguments. In the 1990s, a geologist proposed that the deep, rounded channels on the enclosure walls were carved by heavy rainfall, which would push the Sphinx back thousands of years into a wetter age. Most geologists and Egyptologists disagree. They point to the extreme softness of these particular layers, to salt crystallizing inside the stone and popping it apart flake by flake, and to long burial under damp sand. The mainstream dating stays firmly with Khafre's reign, but the controversy sent scientists crawling over every inch of this rock, and the statue is better studied because of it. There was no iron in Egypt's toolkit when the Sphinx was made. The crews worked with copper chisels, wooden mallets, and hard stone hammers, hauling the spoil away in baskets, one back load at a time. Archaeologist Mark Lehner, who spent years mapping the statue stone by stone, estimated that about 100 workers could have carved it in roughly 3 years. The quarrymen's cut marks are still visible in the trench walls around the statue. Every surface you are looking at was won from the bedrock by hand. When the Old Kingdom collapsed, around 2200 BC, the plateau fell silent and the desert moved in fast. Wind-blown sand pours into any hollow, and the Sphinx sits in a man-made hollow. Within a few centuries, it was buried nearly to the neck, a solitary head staring out of a dune field. That would become the rhythm of its whole existence, dug out and drowned again, over and over, for 4,000 years. The sand was also its best protector, wrapping the soft body away from the wind. 1,000 years after it was carved, Egypt fell in love with the Sphinx all over again. In the New Kingdom, around 1400 BC, the plateau near the statue revived as a place of royal pilgrimage. By then the builder's name was forgotten, and the statue was worshipped as a god in its own right, called Hor-em-Akhet, Horus of the horizon. Pharaohs raised shrines beside it and left carved stones recording their visits, and Amenhotep II built a small temple of his own just northeast of here. The Guardian had outlived its own history and crossed over into legend. The most famous story of that revival stands carved on a granite slab between the front paws. Around 1400 BC, a young prince named Thutmose fell asleep in the shadow of the half-buried Sphinx while hunting in the desert. He dreamed the statue spoke, promising him the throne of Egypt if he would free it from the suffocating sand. Thutmose cleared the sand, and he did become pharaoh, Thutmose IV. Whether true prophecy or shrewd politics from a prince who may not have been first in line, he set the tale in stone, and the Dream Stele has stood here for 3,400 years. The Dream Stele has a thrifty secret. The slab is pink granite from Aswan, hundreds of miles up the Nile, and scholars believe it began life as a door lintel in Khafre's own temple nearby, recycled by Thutmose's workmen 11 centuries after it was first cut. Early copyists recorded a royal name in its damaged lower lines that most read as part of Khafre's, and then the flaking stone carried the passage away forever. That single lost syllable fueled a century of argument about who built the Sphinx. Standing at the rail today, you are looking at a royal proclamation older than the alphabet you think in. The Sphinx once wore a long, braided ceremonial beard, the formal false beard of gods and kings. Most scholars think it was added in the New Kingdom, fitted 1,000 years after the original carving, when the statue was being worshipped as Horus of the horizon. At some point it fell, and the fragments lay in the sand until excavators recovered them in the early 1800s. One large piece is displayed in the British Museum in London, and other fragments are kept in Cairo. The chin is bare now, and Egypt has more than once asked for the London piece to come home. Now for the question every visitor asks: what happened to the nose? Look closely, and the damage is not soft, rounded erosion. Long grooves show where rods or chisels were driven in around the bridge and a nostril, and the nose, about 3 feet wide, was levered off in pieces. Someone destroyed it deliberately, with scaffolding, tools, and real effort, many centuries ago. Who did it brings us to one of history's most stubborn myths. You may have heard that Napoleon's soldiers shot off the nose with a cannon. It is a vivid story, and it is flatly impossible. The Danish traveler Frederick Norden sketched the Sphinx in 1737, and his engravings, published in 1755, already show the nose missing. Napoleon did not land in Egypt until 1798, 61 years later, and the scholars he brought along produced measured drawings that helped launch modern Egyptology. The cannonball tale grew in the retelling, long after everyone involved was gone. The strongest historical lead comes from the medieval Cairo historian al-Makhrizi, writing in the 1400s. He records that in 1378, a zealous Sufi named Mohammed Saim al-Dar found local farmers making offerings to the Sphinx, hoping for better harvests. Enraged by what he saw as idolatry, he attacked and disfigured the face, and in the account he paid dearly for the outrage. The date fits the deliberate tool marks, and by then the statue was a half-buried curiosity, its old religion 2,000 years dead. However the details fell out, the nose was lost to human hands, not to time. We do not know what its builders called it. The original name is simply lost. New Kingdom Egyptians knew it as Hor-em-Akhet, Horus of the horizon. Greek visitors gave us the word we use today, Sphinx, borrowed from their own mythical lion-bodied riddler. Medieval Egyptians called it Abu al-Hal, the father of dread. Each name is a fossil of what the statue meant to the people staring up at it. By the 1800s, the Sphinx was buried to its shoulders again, and the age of excavation opened. In 1817, Giovanni Battista Caviglia, a Genoese sea captain turned antiquarian, led the first modern dig here, clearing the chest and exposing the Dream Stele between the paws. The sand poured back nearly as fast as his workers could carry it out, a curse every later excavator would learn by heart. Auguste Mariette and then Gaston Maspero mounted fresh campaigns in the 1850s and 1880s. Each dig freed a little more of the lion, and each time the desert took most of it back. The Sphinx was not fully freed from the sand until living memory. Between 1925 and 1936, the French engineer Émile Barrès directed a massive clearance for the Egyptian Antiquities Service, uncovering the statue down to the bedrock floor of its enclosure for the first time since antiquity. The Egyptian archaeologist Selim Hassan then excavated the surrounding field and wrote the great scholarly study of the site. Photographs from those years show the lion's body emerging from the dunes like a ship being launched. After perhaps 3,000 years, the whole Sphinx finally stood in open daylight. Excavation also cleared away a famous red herring. A small carved stone found at Giza, called the Inventory Stele, claims the Sphinx was already standing before Khufu built the Great Pyramid. For a while that electrified everyone who wanted the statue to be impossibly old. But the stele was carved around 600 BC, some 2,000 years after the Old Kingdom, by temple priests polishing the antiquity of their own shrine, and scholars class it as pious fiction. It is a useful reminder that even ancient sources can be advertising. On this plateau, archaeology has to out-argue legend every single day. The Sphinx has been under repair for most of its life. New Kingdom crews clad the crumbling body in fitted limestone blocks more than 3,000 years ago, and later masons of the Greek and Roman era added patches of their own. In the 1980s, a hurried modern restoration using cement and oversized blocks did more harm than good, and in 1988 a large piece of the shoulder broke away and fell. Egypt answered with a decade of painstaking work, replacing the bad patches with hand-cut limestone in the ancient manner, completed in 1998. Conservators now watch the stone constantly, fighting groundwater, salt, and wind, because keeping a 4,500-year-old statue standing is a permanent job. Yes, there are passages in the Sphinx, and no, they do not lead to a lost hall of records. Explorers have documented a few short shafts and niches, including a dead-end passage at the rear, most likely the work of ancient treasure hunters or early investigators. Modern surveys with seismic gear and boreholes have found natural cavities in the bedrock, but no hidden library. The tale of secret archives beneath the paws comes from a 20th century American psychic, not from any Egyptian text. The real mysteries here, the lost name and the vanished builders, are stranger than the invented ones. Today, the Sphinx marks the exact frontier between two worlds. Behind it stretch the silent pyramid field and the open Sahara. In front of it, just past its temple, begins the roar of Greater Cairo, a metropolis of more than 20 million people. Visitors from every nation file along this terrace from morning until the gates close. After dark, the statue stars in a sound and light show, its face lit in shifting colors, while a recorded voice tells its story. The guardian that once watched over a royal cemetery now keeps watch over a megacity. Walking away, you understand why every age has projected its own story onto this face. It has been a king, a god, an idol, a riddle, and a postcard, and it has outlasted every power that claimed it, including the one that carved it. Empires rose, converted, crumbled, and were excavated, and the lion just kept facing east. Almost nothing made by human hands has stood in place, in service, and in sight for so long. Tomorrow morning, the sun will rise directly in front of that ruined, patient face, exactly as it has about 1.6 million times before. The Great Sphinx is the strangest kind of monument, one that asks more questions the longer you look at it. We walked its enclosure, read its geology, met the king who probably ordered it and the prince who dreamed beside it, and cleared its name of a French cannonball. If this journey moved you, our Egypt series continues among the pyramids, tombs, and temples of the Nile. The desert wind will keep testing this stone, and the conservators will keep answering. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.